Hey there, everyone. This is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives. And today we're going to be discussing the 23rd film to be released as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man: Far From Home. And as of the time of this recording, it is actually the latest film to be released as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that pretty much means that we are pretty much caught up with this video. But of course, before we get into actually talking about the movie, let's talk about the build up to it. When the trailers for this film first dropped, it was before Endgame had been released. Like, trailers for Endgame had come about, but... Excuse me. I have a soda here. But, pretty much, it did, and nothing major had been revealed. As such, when this film came out, when the trailers for this film were dropped, it kind of revealed a few spoilers for Endgame. Specifically, that the characters that got poofed away at the end of Infinity War would be returning, as a few of the major characters that return in this film in Far From Home were Peter Parker, no duh, and Nick Fury. As such, it kind of got a little bit of backlash for revealing that spoiler, but my response to that is, of course we knew they were going to come back. Like I said, these are a bunch of big namers wound up disappearing at the end of Infinity War. There was no way they were going to keep them dead for. There was no way they were going to just let them stay dead. Odds are they'd find some way to bring them back, and this film pretty much confirmed that they were going to come back. But by that same token, however, it didn't reveal any major spoilers for Endgame. It did reveal a few things here and there, but it did reveal like I said, it did reveal that these people were coming back, but it didn't reveal any major spoilers for Endgame until after Endgame had been released. In fact, just that after Endgame was released, they actually did when they released the new version of the trailer. They actually had Tom Holland at the beginning, pretty much warning everybody this has spoilers for Endgame in it, so watch that before you watch this. And as such, it was a good idea that they kept it hidden like that, because while it did reveal these characters coming back, it didn't reveal how they were brought back and other major events from Endgame, like the death of Tony Stark. As such, but at the same time, you knew this film was, it didn't really have, it did have spoilers, but nothing too major. But with that being said, the film was also set to release after Endgame had come out, so this film kind of had the daunting task of following up from Endgame, kind of giving us some follow through with what happened at the end of that movie, especially with all the big stuff that happened with Endgame. As such, when this film came, but that being said, I was still super excited to see this. It was again another Spider-Man film in the MCU. Even with everything that happened in Endgame, I was really looking forward to seeing it. Sorry, I thought it looked a little off center. And so when it was released, me and my cousin went to go see it, and I did remember liking it. So does that still hold up months later? Probably. Anyway, before we get to that, let's get to the spoilerific plot summary. In terms of continuity, this film takes place 8 months after the events of Endgame. In this case, pretty much people are actually calling the event with Thanos the blip, where pretty much a group of people pretty much blipped out of existence for 5 years and then came back. And from the perspective of everyone that disappeared, it felt like they never left. It's just like they were there. It's like they were doing their thing 1 second, and then everything changed around them the next second. It's like next time, like when an example being when the snap occurred, there was a band being playing for a game, and so people were filming it, showing what was going on, and then when everyone was brought back, they were playing a football game in the same gym where it was going down, and when suddenly when the band members reappeared, they wound up running into them, which pretty much did confirm that everyone returned to the exact same spot that they were in before, which kind of sucks if you were on a plane or a boat, but whatever. Anyway, for the students of Midtown High that disappeared in the blip, they pretty much were sent back to school and were pretty much just sent back and were pretty much allowed to redo the school year they were in from the beginning, even if they had taken midterms and so forth. So, sucks a little bit, but what can you do? But and of course, since this is a follow-up to Endgame, and since it's a Spider-Man film, Peter is of course dealing with some of the fallout from that in both sides of his life. As Spider-Man, he's pretty much just being shot at from all sides, asking if he's going to become the next Iron Man, which is something Peter is not exactly okay with doing because it's putting a lot of pressure on him. On top of this, with everything that's happened, on top of as such, combined with everything that happened in Endgame and just with the death of his mentor, yeah, he needs a vacation, and coincidentally, that's exactly what's going to happen as the school is doing this science field trip to Europe, where a group of students, Peter included, will be sent there as just kind of a vacation, and well, Peter thinks he needs it. He pretty much just wants to take a break from his Spider-Man stuff. Like he doesn't want to quit cold turkey, but at the same time he doesn't really want to. He just wants to leave the Spider-Man persona behind, to the point where he actually leaves his costume behind on purpose with thinking he won't need it, though May ends up packing it for him. Aunt May ends up packing it for him anyway. However, he also wants to take this opportunity while in Europe to confess his feelings to MJ, as ever since the events of Homecoming, he's started slowly developing feelings for her, just talking to her, just noticing the little glances she's made at him, and he's noticed that he thinks that she's kind of being more cute. He thinks she's kind of cute, funny, speaks her mind, and he wants to try and start a relationship with her. As such, his plan is this: when they're because their trip pretty much will bring because while on vacation he wants to buy her a Black Dahlia crystal necklace because it's based on a murder or whatever, I don't know. And then when they go to France, he wants to bring her to the top of the Eiffel Tower and then give it to her and confess his feelings. Ned thinks it's a dumb idea because he wants him to be like summer bachelors in Europe because he thinks because that's what he wants. But Peter still wants to go through with it. But the thing is, before he left, Happy Hogan told him that Nick Fury was going to try and contact him, though Peter ends up ghosting him because, like I said, he wants to pretty much take a break from being Spider-Man. As such, he just wants to go on the vacation and just kind of get moving. As a and on the plane, he does want to try and get for his first step towards getting closer to MJ by getting close to her, by kind of changing seats and moving with her, and he even tries getting Ned's help, but it backfires royally, and instead of having him sitting next to MJ, it instead gets him seated next to one of his teachers, while Ned gets MJ's seat, and MJ gets moved to sit next to a kid named Brad who's in their class. And just straight to the point, Brad's only purpose in this movie is to be a romantic rival for Peter, as he has feelings for MJ too and wants to try and get closer to her as well. But that's just kind of his whole point in the movie. It's kind of lame. Thing is, though, like I said, Peter is also still reeling with the death of Tony Stark, and that's part of the reason why he does need this vacation. It's not just the fact that he's being pressured into trying to taking Tony Stark's spot as the next Iron Man, but it's just, again, he was like Tony's he was Tony's personal protege, and so with the death of Tony, it is hitting Peter hard as well, even after 8 months, as he's still being constantly reminded about what Tony did in Endgame. But even with this jump around, Peter's class does end up going to Venice and does kind of enjoy the time, taking in the sights, just seeing everything, checking into the hotel. And Peter is able to get the Black Dahlia necklace for MJ that he wanted to get her. However, while they're enjoying the vacation, things start going downhill as the waters of Venice start reacting weirdly. As people investigate, they suddenly erupt as they form into I guess I can easily say, a water monster. Peter, of course, can't really do his full Spider-Man thing out in public since he intentionally left his costume back in his hotel room. As such, he tells Ned to get everyone as far away as possible while he gets on his web shooters to try and fight this thing. While he tries to fight this thing, unfortunately, it's a giant water monster, and while he may have superpowers, webs aren't really a good defense against this thing. So really, his best bet is just to try and keep it distracted and away from people. However, while he is knocked aside by this thing, he does seem to get some unexpected help from a new adversary. In this case, as this man in a green suit, purple cape, and with I guess I can easily say, a fishbowl on his head flies in. This is a man that we later learn is named Quentin Beck, and I'll get into his backstory later, but pretty much he's fighting. He seems to be armed with magical powers and is fighting off the water monster. When Peter sees this, he tries to get he grabs like a festival mask to hide his identity and offers his help to Beck and so pretty much Peter is just doing and so he and Beck managed to lead the monster away from the river and onto land, so it will be deprived of water. While it's causing destruction, Peter is just doing his best to handle cleanup and make sure people don't get hurt. As such, they managed to get into a central area where Beck managed to use his powers to pretty much just destroy the monster and then make his getaway. Later on, the students are watching a news broadcast about it, and they pretty much and the news broadcast ends up calling him Uomo de Mysterio, which is supposed to be Italian for man of mystery. And that's pretty much where he gets the name. And so the students so Ned and Betty end up calling him Mysterio because they think it's a good name. And oh yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. Apparently, Ned and Betty end up growing close on the plane, and so now they're a couple. It's mostly just there for gag, but it's mostly just there for the lulz. But whatever. But even with the water monster, Peter thinks that it's not his problem. He just wants to still enjoy his vacation. He thinks that Mysterio's got it handled. As such, he and Ed go back to their hotel room. But as Peter tries to wash up, Ned gets tranked and knocked out. By who? Nick Fury, who got fed up with Peter ghosting him and decided to go see him in person. As such, he grabs Peter. He gets Peter out of the hotel room because they're getting too many interruptions from people, and brings her to their secret hideout somewhere in Venice. Though on the way there, Nick Fury gives Peter these glasses that Tony Stark had made and wanted Fury to give to Peter. As they get to their hideout, and we see Fury's entourage, including Maria Hill and this other guy, Dimitri, I think his name is, and that's where they ultimately run into Quentin Beck. That's ultimately where they run into Quentin Beck, or when Peter sees him, he calls him Mysterio, and well, Beck actually picks up on the name and actually likes it as he starts using it regularly after this. But pretty much we start getting an explanation about what the heck's going on. It turns out that Beck is actually a superhero from a parallel universe. Apparently on his Earth, there were 4 monsters made up of the base elements of the world called the Elementals. There was wind, earth, water, and fire. And prior to the incident in Venice, Quentin actually fought the other 2 in Mexico, which is where Nick Fury came in, as apparently they heard about what was going on in Mexico and went to investigate, and that's where they ran into Mysterio, and they so far been working together, and they've been working together on trying to get and kind of cover them. As apparently the reason why they're now here is because in the snap, it opened up a rip in time and space that allowed the Elementals to come to this Earth, and Mysterio followed. And pretty much what's going on is that they believe the Elementals will be appearing in all the locations they were appeared on, but on Quentin's Earth, and pretty much with the water elemental taken care of, that's pretty much 3 elementals out of the way, as the wind and earth elementals were taken care of in Mexico. The final elemental being the fire elemental, which Quentin says is supposed to be the most powerful one of them all, as apparently if it can access the power of the Earth's core and actually use that power to pretty much destroy Quentin's Earth and everyone he loved. As such, with all this going on, they want Peter's help, as this is a pretty big deal, and they think they need his assistance. Peter, of course, thinks that this is dumb because he's just still because he's a 16-year-old kid from Queens, and he wants to be, and he's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. To which Nick Fury says, "Dude, you've been to space." And the Peter just tries to write that off as an accident. But he even tries listing off other heroes that could possibly deal with this, like Thor, Doctor Strange, or Captain Marvel, which is the first time we actually hear her being called Captain Marvel in universe. But none of them are available, or in the case of Captain Marvel, they just don't want to call her because they're afraid of her. But even then, Peter still says that he doesn't want to get involved in all this. As even if he did want to even if he did help them and do his Spider-Man thing, it would raise too many questions, as ever since the event in Washington, D.C. with his Vanishing Act, if the other students saw him saw Spider-Man appearing while Peter Parker mysteriously vanished. Then he thinks they'd be able to put two and two together and realize that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He says he just wants to deal with his vacation, that he can't help them. And Nick Fury at first seems to be understanding of this and says, "Okay, fine. Well, then we'll go back to your hotel room. Everything will be fine. You just go back to your vacation." And it seems to go well until the next day when their teachers tell them their tour is being redirected to where? Prague, as that's where the fire elemental is supposed to reappear. And so Peters realizes that their entire vacation has just been hijacked, especially when they go to their tour bus, there's Dimitri as their driver. In the meantime, though, as they're driving along, Peter decides to take a look at the sunglasses that Fury gave him, and it turns out that, and when he tries, and along with the sunglasses, there's a note that says to the next, that was written by Tony, called "To the next Tony Stark, I trust you with this," as well as instructions saying, "Just say Edith." Just say Edith. As such, Peter puts the glasses on and says Edith, and it turns out that the glasses are equipped with an AI called, well, Edith, which stands for "Even Dead, I'm the Hero," which, yeah, that's totally a Tony Stark thing that he would do. Sorry. As such, pretty much the sunglasses are linked to a lot of Stark Industries' higher companies, like drone strikes, interpersonal stuff. He can even use it to hack other communications, as he's able to look around the bus and get an ID on every single person there, as well as some of the stuff they're doing. Like if they're on their phone, he can see what they're texting, just little things like that, just seeing how they're acting. And also a little side note: apparently Flash is not having a good home life, as he's trying to text his mom, but she's not answering him. It's a little tragic. But as Peter's playing around with this, they end up stopping at this little town to try and for a rest stop. But as Peter gets off, Dimitri kind of redirects him to another building where he meets a woman who is kind of there to help solve his Spider-Man problem. As apparently Nick Fury Fury had this woman develop him a new costume that will allow him to act as Spider-Man without being ID'd as Spider-Man. Although when Peter gets the costume, she tells him to strip to try it on, and well, at that point, Brad ends up walking in and takes a picture of Peter with his pants down, and with the woman there, it looks like that he was going to get it on with her. Peter tries telling him not to show it to MJ, but Brad makes it clear that he cares about her and he thinks he needs to show this to her. As such, when they get back on the bus, Peter tries to use Edith to get the picture deleted, but Edith interprets that as he wants to make Brad a target and instead sends a killer drone after him. Peter does try to call it off, but thanks to hijinks involving Flash stealing the glasses and Peter knocking him out, the drone is still set to kill Brad, and so Peter is able to distract everyone that's on the bus by saying there's baby goats on the side, and so he's able to use that opportunity to jump out of the bus, take out the drone, and jump back in. Again, before using Edith properly to delete the picture. But as such, the group manages to get to Prague, but pretty much just showing that pretty much the scene exists just to show what Edith is capable of, as that was a drone strike. That's not, and just kind of how, and on top of that, just how unprepared Peter is with this. As such, when the group gets to Prague, Peter is still a little nervous, as even with this distraction, he still wants to confess his feelings to MJ, but things are still not going well, and it kind of gets worse as when he goes to meet with Fury and Mysterio. Fury's not exactly happy with him, especially with the drone strike thing, he thinks that he's starting to think that maybe Tony Stark picked the wrong kid. This does kind of get to Peter, and as he kind of goes off to sulk, when Mysterio goes to meet with him and gives him some words of encouragement, which allows Peter to kind of get his spirits back up. But at the same time, though, Peter knows that with the fire elemental coming about, he needs to keep his classmates safe. While Prague maybe not where they wanted to go, there is a festival going on that they wanted to take care of, and well, that's out in the open. He doesn't want his classmates getting hurt. As she uses Edith to change their itinerary again by instead having them get tickets to an opera, which none of the kids are happy with, but they end up going to anyway. And Peter does while there, Peter does try talking with MJ. They get closer, but thanks to the fire elemental, Peter has to make a run for it. Has to leave before the show actually starts. However, MJ ends up seeing Peter leaving and decides to follow after him, and Betty and Ned see MJ leaving, and while Ned is aware that Peter is the one that set all this up because he's still Peter's confidant, Betty does not. So when she wants to leave, he ends up following after, and so they go to the carnival itself. As such, we see Peter now in his new costume, and it's nice. I like it. I'm a sucker for black, and the suit's supposed to be this kind of black stealth suit. It kind of having more stealth gear, looking like a ski mask, and the eyes actually do resemble Spider-Man's regular teardrop eyes, so they're still close enough. But it definitely looks more like a spy outfit than a Spider-Man suit. Spider-Man suit. It is supposed to be, and it is clearly inspired by the noir outfit, though again still taking cues from regular Spider. No, still taking cues from Spider-Man. It's nice. I like it, and that's mostly just because I'm a sucker for black. But either way, as such, Peter gets into position as the fire elemental appears, and so when it does, he and Mysterio get to work trying to fight this thing. And as Mysterio tells him that the best the best way to keep him from getting bigger sorry, something's going downstairs. I don't know what it is, but either way, pretty much as things are going down, as the best way they can keep the fire elemental from reaching into the Earth's core and getting power is to keep him getting bigger, which means don't let it absorb metal. And while Peter and Mysterio do their best to actually fight this thing off, it still keeps absorbing more and more metal. And things continue especially getting worse when, well, Ned and Betty were on a Ferris wheel when everything went down, and when the fire elemental attacked, the operator ran off, leaving them stuck there. As such, Peter has to do his best to try and protect them as well. But MJ's watching all this too, having gotten to a safe distance away from the carnage to keep herself safe. However, as during the fight, Peter does try to go and help Ned and Betty from getting hurt and trying to get to the Ferris wheel, and so he plans to just web it up and try and keep it. And he tries to web the Ferris wheel to keep it in place. However, his web seems to hit something that he can't see, which when he tries pulling it back, it ends up ripping something metal off it and flying away, which MJ sees and picks up. Either way, Peter is able to get to the Ferris wheel and keep it in place while Mysterio deals with the fire elemental. Unfortunately, it seems to absorb too much metal, and it has gotten big enough so that it couldn't reach the Earth's core again, and so Mysterio decides to use this strange, weird, this final spell that he says he should have used back on his Earth, and he used it to pretty much fly into the fire elemental and just destroy it. As such, Fury and Maria Hill arrive on the scene after everything's over, and thankfully Mysterio is still in one piece. And with what he did, Fury wants to offer Mysterio the chance to join a new team Avengers. As such, he goes up to Peter, and while he does, and he pretty much tells Peter he thinks he has good gifts, and Tony Stark chose him for a reason, and Tony Stark chose him for a reason. He doesn't want him to be wrong, and he doesn't want to prove him wrong. And he says that if Peter wants to join them as well, that he should join them in Berlin, in their base in Berlin. Peter, of course, is still hesitant about this, but at the same time, Mysterio kind of goes up to him and tells him, Mysterio goes to him and says, "Come on, let's get away to drink." As such, they go to a bar, and Peter and Beck just start kind of just talking. And it's actually a pretty nice scene as they're kind of just shooting the shit, kind of exchanging ideas, and Quentin just starts and Peter just starts telling him more and more about what he did and Peter just starts kind of telling Beck about all this, about all the expectations being placed on him, how Tony chose him to be his successor, how he left these glasses for him, how Nick Fury wants him to take up his place as Iron Man, to which Beck responds with, "Well, what do you want?" As such, and Peter just makes it clear. He just wants to go on vacation and confess his feelings to the girl he likes. And Beck says, "Well, why don't you just do that?" And it's fair enough. It's actually good advice in the most part, because Peter does kind of need that. He does sort of need to have some room to breathe and kind of have his own life. And with everything that happened in Endgame, I think it is justified. I think he should get a break. But by that same token, he still has all these expectations placed on him. Hold on a second. Sorry, dog. Anyways, I was saying, it's like I was saying, but like Peter still thinks that Peter even thinks that he's still not exactly responsible, especially with the glasses, as he pulls them out and he actually wound up dropping, as during the conversation it turns out he dropped them, and even Beck kind of calls him out and is like, "These are very sorry, there are children screaming right now." I'm gonna try and ignore them. Anyway, as I was saying, pretty much even Beck calls him out on this, because these are expensive glasses. who are sorry. These are expensive glasses, and he just dropped them. Like that, you don't want to lose those things. But Peter tries them on, and Beck kind of tells him he looks like a dork, and so Peter gives him a chance to try them on, and they seem to fit him better. And Peter starts thinking that maybe Tony didn't give them give him the glasses because he thought that he deserved them, but maybe he thinks that Tony trusts him to find the rightful successor to them, saying that he said to the next Tony Stark, "I trust you," and so Peter thinks that maybe he trusted Peter to find the next true successor, and so he thinks that successor should be Quentin. While he does try and say no, I shouldn't have this. They were for you. Peter tells Edith to give control over to Beck and kind of lists him as another possible user, and so he hands the glasses over to Beck as he decides to follow Beck his advice and just enjoys vacation. As such, Beck just kind of says, "Well, thanks, and I hope to see you around. I hope you have a good time." And Peter says thanks, and so he ends up leaving the bar, and we soon learn what's really going on. As the instant Peter leaves the bar, things start to change. As when they enter the bar, it looked nice and full of life and just all around a good place. But then when Peter leaves, suddenly all the pain seems to fade away. Certain people start going out of phase, and Beck is just smiling and just says, that was easy, wasn't it?" And yep, turns out that he's a fraud, which actually kind of made me really happy when I saw this movie, because if you know a thing about Mysterio at all in the comics, you know that that the whole magic thing and so forth, that's not Mysterio. Mysterio is an illusionist. He operates by tricks and misdirection. He has no real power of his own. But as such, when I saw him in the film, I knew he was going to eventually be the villain, but with the way things are going and how they did their advertising, they definitely made it clear. It looked like that they were going to try and market him as having actual power. As such, while I did think that he probably would turn on Peter eventually, I didn't know. I was fooled into thinking they were actually going to give him real superpowers. But then when I actually saw this scene and saw everything go away, I had the biggest grin on my face. As I was like, "Oh, they're actually going with what happens in the comics." As yep. It turns out it's all lies. The elementals, the story from another dimension, everything was all made up. And this scene is where we get into a lot of exposition about what's really going on. It turns out Quentin Beck is actually a former Stark employee. Specifically, he is the man that made that virtual reality thing that Tony used in Captain America Civil War to have his little personal therapy session with his dad, which he called a barf. And Beck was the one that helped install that, it was with that technology that he's been creating all these disasters using the elementals, which as they're all holographic projections that are being created by drones. And on top of that, to help to kind of keep all this in check, he has an entire team behind him, all of them made of disgruntled former Stark employees. In fact, his number 2 guy is actually the guy that Obadiah Stane was yelling at in Iron Man 1 to recreate the arc reactor, which I like that. It's a nice way of tying it all together. And pretty much, but the thing is, though, Quentin's big motivation behind this is that, well, he feels he got snubbed by Tony, and when he confronted Tony about how he was using his tech and even when he called it the barf, Tony wound up firing him because, well, he was emotionally unstable. As such, he's pretty much resented Tony ever since, and it shows that even when Tony's dead, he's still making supervillains. And pretty much he and all these other people feel like that they just didn't get any credit for all the work they put in. As in the world of the Marvel Universe, if you want to get any sort of attention, you gotta be, in their eyes, they think you gotta be like someone that has superpowers and can shoot lasers out of their hands, etc. And so that's what they aim to do. With Iron Man's death, they saw this as an opportunity for them to come into the limelight, and so with Quentin leading them all, they developed the Mysterio persona, with their plan being to pretty much get everybody to make himself look like a hero to everybody and get all the attention he thinks he deserves. But with that being said, all the destruction he was causing was real, as the drones he was using to cast the holograms also had weapons installed. So people were actually getting hurt. So yeah, he is kind of nuts, as well as everyone else that he's working with. They're all kind of loco. But of course, this comes back to the question of why do they want to? Why do they involve Peter in all this? Well, it turns out one of their members actually. Turns out that this group was aware of the Edith AI. However, when Tony died and they learned that they weren't getting it, that it was being said handing over to Peter, they thought this was an outrage. As such, part of the reason why they got Peter involved was because they wanted him to give them the Edith AI, and pretty much they knew that of course they couldn't just take it. It was imprinted to Peter, and Tony being Tony, he would probably not sign this thing over to a complete whack job like Quentin Beck, which they imply that even Quentin Beck is probably not even his real name, but they still only call him Quentin Beck throughout this, so I'm gonna keep calling him that anyway. But pretty much they were able to figure out that Peter was going to be the beneficiary of the Edith AI, so they set this whole thing up and got him involved to earn his trust and eventually have Peter willingly hand over the Edith glasses. Hence, what this whole scenario was for, making him think that they were friends and allies and so forth. As such, his big plan is just to make a big flashy show, get as much attention on him as possible, and make himself look like the big damn hero, while pretty much cementing himself as the next Iron Man. And unfortunately, Peter just handed him over the keys to pretty much Peter pretty much handed him over the keys to all the weapons of Stark Industries at the disposal. As with Edith, they're able to log it into the server they're using for all the drones, and they're able to lock it into the server that they use with all the drones, and pretty much with all their capabilities, it pretty much expands their radius about what they can and can't do. As such, later on, after all this, Peter returns to his hotel and wants to meet up with his friends, but it turns out with all the disasters that have been going on, they're being sent home as, well, the parents of these kids don't want their kids around all these monsters and disasters, so they think they'll just be safer at home. Peter is still worried that he hasn't really confessed his feelings to MJ yet, so he managed to get a word with her. So he manages to talk to her and wants to go and see her for a walk. As such, Peter gets the black Dahlia necklace ready and plans to confess his feelings to her. But as he says, I have something to tell you. She says, I know you have something to say. And hold on a second. Sorry, once again the dog. Anyway, as I was saying, Peter is ready to confess to MJ, but she cuts him off and says that she thinks his confession is that he's Spider-Man. Peter is actually a little shocked by this, and he tries to deny it, but it turns out that MJ's kind of been putting the pieces together ever since the event in Washington D.C. back in Homecoming. She's been able to figure. She's been watching Peter intimately and been able to put the pieces together that he's Spider-Man. And when Peter hears this, though, he thinks that, wait, was that why you were watching me? Why you were watching me all those times? And so he thinks that MJ really didn't have feelings for him. She was just trying to analyze him to prove that he was Spider-Man. Which does kind of hurt him, which does kind of get to Peter a bit, but he still continues denying that he's Spider-Man. And, of course, he tries proving it with the incident with the fire elemental, but pretty much the whole idea with that, but pretty much thanks to Ned, the news has been broadcasting that as a knockoff hero called Night Monkey, which that's kind of, which the suit's kind of been called the Night Monkey suit, and it's humorous, it's humorous and just and amusing. And Peter even tries saying, "Oh, that was just Night Monkey," but MJ then pulls out the metal thing that Peter wound up webbing up during the fight to say that no. Well, then why would Night Monkey have Spider-Man's webs? Peter still is trying to deny it, but in the process, they accidentally activate the machine and end up getting an image of the wind elemental flying in. Peter starts freaking out, and they start freaking out until it turns off. But then when Peter picks it up and activates it again and realizes that it's an illusion, it's fake, and that this thing is a projector that's been projecting these images that look realistic, but are not. As such, Peter is able to put two and two together and realize that the elementals are all fake, but at the same time he also realizes that the destruction was real, and he starts wondering who would intentionally create disasters and blame them on fake monsters. And it gets worse as in the hologram he sees Mysterio flying in and fighting the monster, and so Peter realizes that Quentin Beck is a fraud and that he's been setting up these disasters so that he can come in and play the hero. As such, Peter realizes just that he gave him the Edith AI, and with this information, he does just tell MJ outright, yeah, I'm Spider-Man and I need your help. As such, they go back to the hotel and Peter gets suited up and pretty much tells MJ about the stuff with the Edith glasses and that and what's going on with Fury, and he tells him that he needs to go to Berlin to warn Fury about Beck. However, and of course Ned ends up walking in while they're doing this, and so he gets Ned and MJ to cover for him, saying that May called him and sent him to a family member in Berlin, which Aunt May is able to cover with too, because like we showed at the end of Homecoming, at the end of Homecoming and in the beginning of this movie, she knows that Peter is Spider-Man, and so Peter's able to go to Berlin. However, as we see there's a lot of stuff going on here. As we see Beck in his crew back at their own hideout, trying to practice for the next disaster, trying to make themselves look as good, trying to get all the effects as realistic as possible, propping up the weapon systems with the drones to up the damage and so forth. And their plan is pretty much just to create the mother of all disasters. I'm sorry if you're hearing all that. This is the worst time to do this. Pretty much Quentin's plan is just to make an Avengers level threat that he can come in, play the hero, and get everyone to look at him and give him attention. However, during the whole process, he finds the hologram seems to be a bit out of phase, and it's because one of the drones is missing its holographic projector, which Beck immediately starts freaking out about, because if it's lost it, then that means there's evidence out there, and he's especially worried about that because they've been going to great lengths just to make this look as realistic as possible, even to the point where they were able to fool Nick Fury, who is supposed to be like the most paranoid man on Earth. So if they miss even one little piece of evidence, that could tie back to them and realize they're fakes, the frauds, then yeah, it'll come crashing back at them. Hold on a second. Anyway, as I was saying, he's freaking out about the lost evidence. As such, they use Edith to try and track where it fell off, and unfortunately, Quentin ultimately discovers that MJ and Peter are the ones with the holographic projector, and well, to try and cover their asses, Quentin decides he's got to kill Peter and MJ. As such, Peter manages to get to Berlin and tries asking around for where he can find Fury, until Fury ends up driving up in a car and picks him up and brings him back to the base. As such, Peter starts telling them about everything and tells them that Beck is actually manufacturing these disasters, and even shows them the holographic projector to try and give them proof, and they do seem to take this in stride as they say, well, if what you're saying is true, then that means he's a very dangerous man. Well, what can we do? They do, and so for security reasons, we should probably tell us about everyone that knows about this. But Peter suddenly stops as his spider sense starts tingling, which for some reason they call it Peter tingle in this movie, but I'm going to call it spider sense because that's what it is. As he realizes that Quentin is in the building, and so he gets ready for battle, and sure enough, the building's facade seems to fade away as it all seems to have been a hologram. Fury seems to be confused too as he pulls out his weapon, only for him to be shot by an invisible drone. The drone shoots at Peter as well, but the suit manages to block the bullet, and so Peter's knocked down to a floor, and Beck just starts taunting Peter as suddenly a bunch of other drones come up and change the environment into these strange surreal images. And I'm not gonna lie, this is my favorite scene in the whole movie, as the entire thing is so much of a mind screw, as the environments keep changing, everything keeps moving around, everything is so surreal, strange, and just so odd and mysterious. All of it fits Mysterio perfectly, as Peter has no idea if what he's looking at is real or not. And while he objectively knows that it probably isn't real, it all seems very realistic, and so he's kind of being pulled into the trap So he's still being kind of pulled into the trap as the environment keeps shifting. Mysterio keeps taunting him by showing him his loved ones, showing his loved ones, even taunting him by saying that he's not worthy, and that if he was stronger, then maybe Tony would have still been alive. But pretty much the whole point of this is just saying that he is he thinks Peter's unworthy and that he's creating Mysterio to give people a new truth, give someone they can look up to, that he's the one, that he'll make him the truth, that he's the big one in charge. But in the middle of this mocking, he's seemingly shot by Nick Fury, which in turn seems to cancel the illusion. As such, Peter wakes up as a bunch of Fury's underlings come up, and Fury comes up and apparently having survived the bullet. But he still wants to know exactly if anybody else knows about this because they might need some security. Peter says that Ned would know, that MJ and Ned know, and Ned may have told Betty since they're dating, but otherwise he thinks that's it. And then it's revealed that that this isn't even Nick Fury, as it turns out this is just another illusion. The entire thing from the moment he was picked up was just Quentin Beck trying to probe Peter on if anybody else knew, so that he could wipe away any potential security risks. As such, he used the drones to once again put Peter into more illusions, causing him to just gradually back up until he gets in the way of a train and gets hit by it, seemingly killing him, or at least that's what Beck thinks. As such, when Peter's gone, he has Edith once again redirect their trip, except this time he wants to bring them to Berlin so that he can pretty much just take care of them. Pretty much take care of Peter's classmates as he needs to get rid of them. Though on top of that, he also plans on getting rid of Nick Fury, as well, he was going to get rid of him anyway, just to try and cover all his bases. As such, however, it turns out Peter did manage to survive getting hit by the train, and he managed to crawl inside, though he's critically injured. As such, when Peter wakes up, he finds that finds himself in a jail cell, stripped of his costume, as apparently he's as it turns out the train brought him to the Netherlands. As such, while Peter's in the jail, and of course the guard is of course wearing his costume, but Peter is of course able to easily escape because of his spider powers. And so he managed to go out into the center of town, and someone lets him borrow their phone so he can call Happy so he can come pick him up. As such, they get into the plane, and Happy managed to patch him up, but Peter's still kind of beating himself up as he gave Quentin this very powerful technology, and now he's out there possibly getting ready to kill all of his friends. So he's not exactly so he's kind of having a freak out as he's still mourning for Tony's loss, and he still thinks that he's feeling all the pressure being built up. He's just kind of Hi, Sam. Once again, sorry, an interruption. Children don't seem to understand what a stop sign means. Well, let's get this over with. But like I said, Peter is just feeling all the pressure building up, and he just feels like that no matter where he goes, that he sees Tony's face, and he's constantly told he needs to be Tony Stark, but he doesn't know if he can live up to the memory. To which Happy responds with, "You're right. You probably can't live up to the memory. I don't think anybody can. I don't even think Tony could. He was always second guessing himself, wondering if his decisions were right, always wondering what to do. But the one decision he never seemed to question was picking you as his successor." And I think this kind of ties into the whole theme that this film is going with Peter's character. Throughout the whole film, Peter is constantly trying to just get back into his normal life as he just is feeling the pressure from Tony's death, as he feels like he needs to be the next Iron Man. That's what people expect of him, and it's obvious the pressure is building to him to the point where he is trying to just move past it. But at the same time, all these expectations are being placed on him. That he was Iron Man's Iron Man's personally chosen candidate for this job. He's the one that Tony Stark relied on, and yet people are constantly expecting him to step up and fill the role, fill Tony's shoes. But as things keep going on, as time keeps going on, it's obvious that the pressure is getting to him, which actually kind of leads to the scene back with Quentin back in the bar. As while his intentions were obviously dubious, he actually did give Peter some good advice. What does Peter want? And honestly, I think that's what the whole heart is. Peter is constantly throughout the film trying to live in the memory, is trying to live up to Tony Stark's memory. But honestly, I think the best way for him to actually continue doing this isn't to be isn't to try and live up to some ideal. Isn't trying to be like Tony Stark. He has to, because Tony was Tony because he was Tony was Stark was Tony Stark. He did his own thing. Peter isn't Tony Stark. He's Peter Parker. He's not Iron Man. He's Spider Man. And Spider Man is who he should be aspire to be like. He shouldn't be that. He shouldn't be trying to use this as a parrot. He shouldn't be trying. And that's really the biggest thing. If he wants to honor Tony's memory, he shouldn't be trying to just be another Tony Stark. He shouldn't be trying to become the next Iron Man. He needs to be Peter Parker. He needs to be Spider Man. That is who he needs to be like, and that if he wants to live up, because if he wants to live up to Tony's memory, he just needs to be himself. He doesn't need to continue Iron Man's legacy. He just needs to make his own, and I think that's the best thing. He shouldn't be, and I think that's really the heart of Peter's character. He should just be trying to do his own thing. He shouldn't be trying to become the next Tony Stark. He should just be trying to do things his way, not Tony's way. He shouldn't be trying to live up to some ideal that doesn't exist. He should just be trying to do. He just needs to be the best Spider-Man he can be, and that's all he needs to be. And with this this pep talk shows it as, thanks to Happy, he decides he needs to go after Beck, and that they need to get to Berlin, or in this case, I think actually it's London. Sorry, and he's able to figure out that it's London because throughout the whole film, Flash has been live streaming everything, and so through Flash's live stream, he's able to figure out where they are. As they go off, and since Peter's now down a suit, since the Night Monkey suit, as we'll call it, got taken by the guard that put him in jail, Happy managed to show him where this pod that has all these files on new suits. As such, Peter is able to scroll through them and starts making his own suit that's played the same AC/DC song that Tony was playing when he made the Iron Man suit. As such, Peter is able to get all his tech ready and design the new suit, and I like the suit. It's a mix of red and black, and I'm a sucker for red and black, and it kind of reminds me of the original Superior Spider-Man outfit. Which isn't a bad thing. Which isn't a bad thing. It still is the same Spider-Man design that I think makes it work and has a nice contrast between the red and black. So I like it. It's nice. But as such as Peter's designing it, though, back in London, as Peter's class gets brought in, they get sent on a bus back. One of Quentin's people hijacks, because their intent is to kill in the disaster is to kill them in the process, while also getting rid of Nick Fury, because even Quentin thinks he's a security risk. As they're getting everything on standby, and they're setting the conditions for a new disaster. As such, when Fury starts picking up the same energy signatures that they've been projecting at the showcase when someone's going to be arriving, this will be the last time, I promise. Sorry. That'll be the last interruption, I swear. Anyway, so they're getting the conditions ready to unleash their newest threat, which in this case, they're trying to make it look like that all the four elementals have merged together into one giant monstrosity. However, before the disaster hits, Happy is able to call Fury and tries to pretty much give him a coded message that pretty much just boils down to looks can be deceiving, trying to let him know that Quentin Beck is a fraud. As such, they arrive in, and so as the amalgam quote unquote appears, Quentin jumps into action as they create the holographic projection of him flying in as Mysterio, while in reality he's safe on this little high-rise glass hallway where he's projecting everything and communicating, just doing everything while his people are I'm gonna lose it, I swear to God. Well, his people are keeping everything organized, keeping the illusion running. However, Fury as he's reading through, as Mysterio says that it seems to be an amalgam of all the elemental creatures combined into one, Fury starts catching on to what Happy was saying and realizes that Mysterio is full of crap. As such, he pretty much instructs Maria to be prepared for anything, and so So Spider-Man hanging onto the jet that Happy is flying, they manage to fly into the thick of London as Spidey ends up gliding right into the middle of the projection and starts using his weapon to mess with all the drones, webbing them all together and then shocking them with a taser web and just shorting them all out and causing the illusion to freeze up, causing the illusion to start to disperse. As such, Mysterio decides that this is starting to fall apart, so he tells him to just cut the illusion, and so as it goes away, it turns out there was one drone that was keeping an eye on Fury, and so Maria ends up shooting it. And so, with the illusions down, Peter manages to find out where Beck is as he tries to swing to him, but unfortunately, with Edith under his control, he's able to use the drones as a buffer to keep him in check. In the meantime, Happy is able to find out where all the students are, and he tries to get them on the jet, but Beck ends up blowing it up, and he just goes screw it and personally sends the drones after the students with Happy in tow. They manage to get into an armory and hold up in the crown jewel vault, but these things are slowly breaking through, while Peter is just doing everything he can to get to Beck. Eventually, Peter does manage to take out a good number of drones in the webs, and he managed to take out the ones that are surrounding Beck, as he manages to use the remains of one of the drones, because they have these sonic devices that they use underwater to try and simulate certain attacks, and manages to get up to him and tries to get to Beck and tries to get the glass away from him. However, Beck still has some drones on standby, and they send him crashing, and so Quentin managed to use the holographic technology to put the entire hallway into total blackness, so Peter can't see anything. And so Peter decides to close his eyes and use his spider sense to guide him as he starts taking out the drones, and with a little effort, until eventually he's taken out so much the illusion can't stand up anymore. As such, Beck ends up telling the remaining drones to just open fire on him, which even Edith tells him that's a bad idea, since the remaining drones are so close to him that he could easily get caught in the crossfire. But he just wants to get Peter dead. He just wants to get Peter dead right now. And so they open fire anyway, but Peter's able to deflect enough drones and knock them aside that Beck ends up getting shot at. And so as he gets knocked down, the remaining drones are no longer seem to have any command and seem to freeze up. As such, Peter's looking over him and just kind of shaming him, talking about how you could do this, and he says, and Beck just says that people need something to believe in, and if they're in the right state of mind, they'll believe anything you tell them. And so it looks like he's about to hand Peter over the glasses, but Peter's spider sense warns him about danger as he grabs what looks like thin air as he hears a gunshot, and Peter turns around, and the Beck he was talking to is an illusion, while the real one is still standing behind him. As such, he actually was shot and everything, so he falls down. And so Peter manages to take the glasses and takes control of Edith again. And so Edith says that she has all the execution commands for the drones in place, and so Peter says, "Do it, execute them all." And so the drones end up turning off and retreating. As such, Peter looks down to. Hold on a second. So there was a screaming child. I had to take care of it. Anyway, as I was saying, he actually was shot. So Quentin unfortunately dies, and Peter even confirms that he's dead by asking Edith if this is real, and Edith says that all the illusions are down. However, it turns out that before he died, Quentin was able to contact his number 2 guy, and even managed to put some kind of illusion up. And so after he dies, he uploads something new to a flash drive and runs off with it. In the meantime, though, with all the carnage, with all the drones taken care of, the rest of the Midtown High students run out, and Peter ends up meeting with MJ. And it turns out that Peter had given Happy the Black Dahlia necklace to give to MJ, and he did give it to her, though it's a bit broken. But they still sent him in as sweet, and it turns out that MJ actually was interested in Peter, and she just denied that she had feelings earlier because she's just not good with people. As such, they begin kissing, and it's just cute. And as such, with all the disaster over, Fury goes up to Happy and wants to get an update on how things are going. going, but Happy says that Peter will call him later as he still needs to get back to his vacation. And so Fury says, "Okay, but you better get me back in. You better get me back in on this, and do not ghost me, or I will find you." As such, Peter returns home. Peter returns home. He and MJ are now a couple. Ned and Betty wind up breaking up, though apparently on good terms. Peter meets back up with Aunt May. They're all happy, and the movie ends with Peter asking Happy and Aunt May if they're dating, to which they both have different answers, with Aunt May saying that it's like just a thing that's going on while Happy thinks that they're actually dating. And Peter then decides to go out swinging and meets up with MJ so he can take her swinging too, though apparently she doesn't take to it as well as he does. So yeah. But of course, Marvel movie, we still got our credit scenes. I'll start with the after credits, and they're both pretty important here, but I'll start with the after credit scene because I think the mid credit scene is better. In this case, the after credit scene actually goes back up with Nick, meets back up with Nick Fury and Maria Hill. Only it turns out they're not Nick Fury and Maria Hill. They're Telos and his wife from Captain Marvel. It turns out they were posing as Nick Fury and Maria Hill, and are actual and it turns out the reason why Nick Fury was bought what Quentin was selling was because he was just so easily convinced by this, and yeah, he's not Fury, so he's not as paranoid. As such, he actually bought it all, and pretty much what's really going on is that Nick Fury's in space enjoying his vacation and kind of commanding this giant Skrull ship, this giant Skrull ship, and he sent Telos to Earth to give Peter the glasses because that was his whole plan. And while Telos was able to do that, there was still the whole disaster and Mysterio going on, and people are asking him questions that he doesn't know the answers to. So he calls Fury and tells him, "Look, yeah, I kind of need your help with this." And so Fury hears the call, hangs up, and decides to get back, and decides that vacation's over. He needs to get back to work. He needs to get back to work. But then we get our mid credit scene. As we see Peter putting MJ down, and she says, "I don't ever want to do that again." And so Peter's just getting ready to swing away, when suddenly the news comes on, as they say that apparently there was an anonymous video that was submitted to, and there was an anonymous video set up that apparently detailed the attack on London the week prior, and it turns out that this was what the number 2 guy reported on. It turns out that before Mysterio died, this was the illusion they were setting up. They wanted to make it look like the monster really was an interdimensional being, and pretty much what the video depicts is Mysterio talking to a camera saying that the drones were Spider-Man's doing, and that he came in and set them up saying that he was going to be the next Iron Man. As they take the whole quote of Peter saying, "Do it, execute them all," out of context, as they instead made it look like Edith said, "Are you sure you want to terminate everybody?" And he said, "Do it, execute them all." And so it makes it look like that Spider-Man was the one responsible for the disaster. However, it turns out that this isn't the only little nugget of truth, as it turns out that at the end of the clip, Quentin Beck outed Peter Parker as he go into the camera and said Spider-Man's real name is Peter Parker, and they even get a good picture of his face, and which causes Peter to freak out. And I think the biggest shocker of all with this mid-credit scene is that it turns out the clip was submitted to the Daily Bugle website. And who should be the one showcasing all of this? Then the jolly one himself, J. Jonah Jameson. Once again, played by J.K. Simmons. And while he may not have the flat top that you would expect from J. Jonah Jameson, I am so glad that he is back as J. Jonah Jameson, because J.K. Simmons is J. Jonah Jameson. He plays the role perfectly. He plays it so well, and he really does work it well. Here, keeping Jonah fast talking and swift, and just quickly blaming Spider-Man, even saying that Mysterio is a protector from another world and will probably go down as the world's greatest hero, which I'm responding with, "Bitch, Iron Man sacrificed his life. What the hell are you talking about?" But yeah, pretty much J. Jonah Jameson is now a thing. He is slandering Spider-Man again. There is pretty damning evidence that makes it look like Spider-Man was responsible for the attack on London. His identity is now outed, and Peter's only response is, "What the f-" before it cuts out. So, yeah, that's a big thing that has to be resolved in later films. So, unless there's any more interruptions, there isn't, but we'll have to wait and see. What did I think of this movie? Like I said, I think it's a lot of fun. I do think that the first film was a little bit better, as that helped set up the world more and felt more in tune, but I think this one was really nice as well. For starters, I like Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. I think he does. I think he was really did good well with the role, but both when he was playing at being the hero and as the villain. Now, and when he was actually revealed as, it actually kind of helped, as when he was a good guy, you did kind of genuinely buy it. He acted nice. He seemed understanding. He seemed like a good guy to talk to, and he seemed to give good advice to Peter. But by that same token, when he ultimately snapped, I think it helped. I think it actually made him worse, as as you realized that this guy was an expert manipulator. And it also helped that if you were familiar with Mysterio and you realized it was all an act, it kind of helped with the whole with the whole facade thing. So I think that was nice, and I thought that was nice, I like and while his motivation is just simply I didn't get all the credit and Tony fired me because he said I was emotionally unstable, I think Mysterio has really done well in this movie. I'm glad that they stuck to the illusionist thing, because I thought that was because while Mysterio may not have a lot of genuine power behind him, he makes up for it with, well, spectacle. Mysterio is a showman. He's an illusionist. He's about misdirection and creating false images. And with that in mind, it allows Mysterio to be a very unique villain. Yeah, he may not have a lot of power behind him, but the real trick is how he uses what he has. He uses the special effects and stage props to make these strange creative imagery. I think my favorite scene, and like I said, my favorite scene in the movie is the scene where Peter and Mysterio. So Peter learns that Mysterio is a villain, and they have their first confrontation with this knowledge. As he uses the drone technology to create this giant illusion around Peter that's just so weird it's just so weird, twisted, and so what the heck, and just so filled with what the WTF imagery that it makes you question what's really going on and what's happening. Like, it's all fake, but it's so cool seeing the way things are changing, seeing them fight, seeing them interacting in these environments. Like there's a phantom hallway with all these lockers. Peter ends up running into a false Eiffel Tower, which ultimately has where the moon takes on Mysterio. He falls out of a building and lands in the middle of all these lands in the middle of all these mirror shards that suddenly come to life and attack him. He's instant. Like, it's all just so it's just so much of a mind screw, and it's just classic Mysterio. It works perfectly for this, and it really is nice, and it helps you forgive that his motivation is just simply, I didn't get enough attention, so I want to seize it back, sort of thing. Genuine downgrade from Thanos, but for what they had in Mysterio, I'm actually kind of glad. I like what they did. What they lacked with in one area, in some areas they made up for in others, because Jake Gyllenhaal plays the role perfectly, as he does manage to get across the whole act, the whole everything from him being subdued to him just being being deranged. I think it really works. And when we do get to the whole villain thing, it is kind of cool seeing the illusions play out and how he uses them. I like that. It's really good. Really good. And on top of that, we do still get some nice humor here and there as we see Peter as we see the antics that Peter's classmates get into, Peter adjusting to the Edith AI and so forth. But I think the biggest strength this movie has is Peter's personal journey. Once again, I think what helps is that we see Peter trying to step into the shoes of someone larger than life than him, in this case Iron Man. But really, at the end of the day, the best way to do that is to not be Iron Man. Just be Spider-Man. Just do his own thing. Be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Help out where it's needed and protect and be a good and just doing his own thing. Not trying to be a carbon copy of somebody else. It's nice, and I like that. It helps set with. That's nice. I like that, and I think that's the central journey, and it helps tie in what happened in Homecoming to the lesson in Homecoming, as both films, everyone put together, are kind of about Peter needing to grow up. In the first film, it was about Peter needing to learn to accept his limitations and learn that he shouldn't have to look to someone else to get his strength. That has to come from himself. That maybe he should start small, but he shouldn't need to that he doesn't need to that he shouldn't need to prove himself to anyone, and that the strength needs to come from inside, and that ultimately means he has to learn his limitations, which allowed him in turn to grow up and mature and realize that maybe he does need to take those steps. And in this film, it's about him trying to learn that he needs to be him. That if he wants to be a hero, he needs to do it as himself. He can't look up to someone else to give him that strength. He needs to be. It has to be him. The strength to be a hero has to come from him. Nobody else. It has to be him. If he wants to be a superhero, he needs to do it as himself, as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. And I like that. That's a good lesson and moral that I think work. We also get some nice adorable stuff between him and MJ, and I think that of course the action scenes are really fun as we still see some good classic active action, Spider-Man action, and especially with the elementals. Yeah, they're fake, but it's nice seeing them all. But it's nice seeing them all come in. But it's nice seeing them how they're utilized and what kind of grand stakes you can have with them. With that being said, do I think this film has some flaws? Yeah, a little. Like the exposition in the middle does kind of feel like they're just stuffing a bunch in so quickly, and they're just trying to get everything out there. And while I did like the romance with MJ, I freely admit that some of the stuff that came from it was a little weird. Like it didn't really have Brad is a superfluous character. He doesn't really need it. The only reason he exists in this film is to be a romantic rival to Peter. And I'm sorry to say that I don't like that. At all. He only existed to be a romantic rival, and that was it. He was just there to get in Peter's way, call him out on certain things, and even pick up on all this stuff to try and make Peter look bad. And really, that was all he was there for. There is some... the same can unfortunately be said for the rest of Peter's classmates, actually. Ned, while he does still kind of act as the comic relief, doesn't really do much for the overarching plot aside from being Peter's cover. There's the stuff with him and Betty, but that's just kind of like a humorous thing going on in the background of the story. The real meat is with Peter and MJ and Peter's own journey. That's the major stuff with them, and of course the stuff with Mysterio. But otherwise, other conflicts just feel there for comedy's sake. When Peter learns that Happy and May are possibly dating. It's treated more like a gag than as an actual thing, and it's just there. It doesn't become intrusive. It doesn't feel like they're just throwing stuff out there, as it doesn't feel like it gets in the way of the main plot. But it doesn't feel like it needs to be there. It needs to actually be there either, and that's ultimately kind of a problem. Which, yeah, problem. And on top of that, the humor is a bit. While I do like the humor, it is sort of a mixed bag. Sometimes sometimes the humor does come from certain scenarios, but it kind of gets a little silly, and they kind of make. And admittedly, part of the humor comes from the teachers just kind of being morons. They just seem to be rolling with the punches, accepting everything as they goes, while even MJ realized that no one really pays attention to Peter, and it doesn't really look like anybody else is either. They're all just kind of oblivious, and they're just there to do stuff. That's really all they exist for, which I don't like. It's just kind of weird, and it's just kind of weird is what I'm saying. They don't really add much to the story. I think they don't really add much is what I'm saying. They're just kind of superfluous. Again, the closest we get to a non-superfluous character is MJ, but otherwise the rest of the characters don't really serve much of a purpose to the plot. Also, this is a pet peeve of mine, and also a couple pet peeves. One, and on top, like I said, the humor kind of got in the way of it as well, and didn't exactly always fit. One of the running gags that I absolutely hated in this movie was how they kept calling the spider sense the Peter Tingle. I don't know why they were calling it the Peter Tingle. I can understand it, if Aunt May is trying to be cool, but no point does he ever say it's called a spider sense, because it's just dumb. That's just dumb. Just call it a freaking spider sense, people. Why do you have to call it Peter Tingle? For humor? Plus, on the note of humor, Spider-Man is strangely less snarky in this movie. Something I commented Homecoming for was that they got Spider-Man's personality down greatly. Yeah, he was a social awkward teen, but he was also much a snarky bastard, just kind of being confident, making cracks and jokes even in the middle of battle. That fits Spider-Man perfectly, but throughout the majority of this movie, he doesn't seem to be cracking much jokes, and he just seems to be kind of And he just seems to be following everyone else's orders and being more complacent. He seems, and on top of that, he seems a lot more trusting too. Like when he sees Mysterio, instead of outright deciding to jump in and help him, he's like, "Oh hey, I'm sticky and can do stuff. Do you want my help or something?" It's just he seems like too trusting, and I understand he's like 16, but I don't know. I feel like that he probably would have at least known that maybe he should just jump in and do some help. I don't know. I don't get it either. It's just I understand he's still in high school, but I still think it's just kind of lame. He seems just too naive, is what I'm saying. And again, there's also Mysterio's motivation just being the whole thing. And once again, we have another villain tied into Tony Stark. When honestly, I don't really understand. I don't think he really needed that much. Okay, this is the last pause. I swear to God, because if it isn't, I'm going to scream. Mental note: never record late again. Anyway, but anyway, but yeah. In terms of this, and as for but pretty much what this film comes down to, but even with all this in mind, I do still think this is a good movie. The action is still a lot of fun. I like the characterization. I like the actor. All the main actors are really good. I like Peter's own personal character journey here, as he has to accept that he doesn't need to be Tony Stark to be. And he doesn't need to be Tony Stark. He just needs to be himself. Mysterio's motivation wasn't exactly great. It was still cool seeing him in action as a villain, as Jake Gyllenhaal did a great job portraying him. There was still some good humor and some good action. Good action. I loved how things turned out. I liked the climax. I loved the action scenes. I thought that all of that worked out, and I thought that all of it worked out. That all it worked out. My main problem with it was that some that didn't is that some of the writing seemed to have suffered a little bit from the last movie, having just kind of injected a little bit too much humor into a few areas that I don't think deserved it. Characters that felt mostly superfluous, Just some just kind of just like the lack of snark from Spidey, and just some stuff, and just some even other story beats like having Brad as the romantic rival when he really didn't have much of a character at all. I don't know, it just didn't work out. So just it's just not. But on the whole, all that doesn't really seem to hold. I think the film still holds up. It's still a really nice movie, still a lot of fun, and I think it's not. And while it may not be as big a film as Endgame, I still think it's a nice little. Still think it's a fun film. So, yeah. But if there are no more interruptions, hopefully, that, as they say, is that. There are at the time of this recording, there are no more films to look at in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And while there are other television shows that could come out, as I said at the beginning of all these vlogs, I have no intention of looking at them. Like I said, the main core of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was the movies, and my whole goal of this was to look back at them and see how they came along from the beginning to the end, and how they came along. And I admit I do slightly regret doing these vlogs, as they took a lot more time to do than the vlogs I did prior to them with Ben 10 and Danny Phantom. But it was still nice rewatching these films from the beginning, especially when going back to Iron Man, as seeing how the films have branched off and grown ever since then, seeing them become what they are, it's still a lot of fun to watch and still a lot interesting to see. And it all started from one simple movie. And that's, I think, and honestly, I think that's what all the other cinematic universes that are trying to get jump started need to learn. Iron Man, in the beginning, wasn't trying to be didn't feel like it was trying to be the beginning of a cinematic universe. It was trying to be just an entertaining story. It was just trying to tell a story about Iron Man and what was going on with him, while only laying a small bit of foundation for a movie if things ever came up. Okay, hold on. I'm not even gonna pause it. Just deal with me here. Either come in or stay out. I don't give a dang. He wants to come in, he can. Sorry, but I've been interrupted way too many times, and it's usually been by that dog. But with that being said, it was still nice watching these movies. Now, do I regret doing them at night? Yes, but that usually came from the movies, and because my dog seems to be a lot more full of energy at night. Don't know why. He just is. But with that being said, it was still not, even with all the how much time it took to do these vlogs and how much time I had to take out just to do them. It was still nice rewatching them, as it was nice seeing how this universe continually progressed from just a movie about a man in a metal suit to to these bigger films, team ups, heroes crossing over into other films, seeing them all just progressively grow through all these things, through everything, and just seeing how they come along. And yeah, well, I do admit I kind of, if I had known how much work it would have, how much time it would have taken, especially with most of the vlogs usually being over an hour, I probably would have rethought doing these. But at the end of the day, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is still, even with all the ups and downs, I still think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is worth watching. While I can even if you aren't a fan of them, you can't deny the impact these films have had. People have, they've become ingrained within our culture and are ultimately and are so and people and pretty much people have become and pretty much the rest and for good and for all the good and bad they brought, they are pretty much, I don't think they're ever going to go away as long as they're making money. I feel like that because they, at the end of the day, all the stories tell their own unique perspectives of the same continuity. They may have their ups, they may have their downs. Some films may be better than others, and there are maybe one or two films that maybe you may not be fans of, like Thor: The Dark World. But at the end of the day, these films are such a great innovation of what can be done what can be done, and the fact they're able to pull it off at all, I think is amazing. But unlike my other vlogs, I don't. This is not the end of the MCU of the MCU perspectives. Like I said, as long as there's money to be made, the MCU is probably going to still be around, and they're still going strong today. And as of now, they're planning on making a new Black Widow movie that's going to be released in May. And rest assured, when that movie comes out in theaters, I'm probably going to look at it. As now that I'm caught up, I'm going to be doing away with my has to be released on DVD rule. As whenever a film comes out in theaters, I'll give it a look at it. Well, like I said, it probably won't be week of release, but it will be getting a look at. And so when Black Widow comes out in May, rest assured, I will be giving it a look at. But for now, that's pretty much it. But of course, with that being said, there are still some things I wish to discuss before I go. As I said before, I don't have any intention on looking at any of the TV shows. Like I said, they aren't as connected to the main stories, and if you ask me, they're more supplemental material than anything. They shouldn't be a part of the official canon. They should just exist to help support it. And that also unfortunately applies to the Disney Plus series, which yesterday I heard that recently Kevin Feige has gone on record and said that that if you wish to understand the future MCU films, you need to watch these Disney Plus shows. I'm sorry to say that I'm still not going to be doing vlogs on them. Like I said, this vlog is to focus on the movies, and I don't want to. And honestly, if you're going to try and if in order to make sense of the movies, you need to watch these shows. I'm sorry, then I think you're screwing something up there. I shouldn't need to watch supplemental material just to understand what happens in the main series. It's like reading an event comic, but then in order to understand certain plot points, you need to have read the tie-ins. It's dumb. I don't like it. I don't like it. Now, if you do get Disney Plus and do want to watch them, good on you. But me personally, I'm not interested. If I ever watch them, it's probably just going to be on DVD or something. But I'm never. But rest assured, I'm not going to buy them firsthand. So yeah. But that, as they say, is that. For now, the MCU perspectives are going to go on hiatus. If you enjoyed the MCU perspectives, then I'm glad that you stuck by me through all these videos. And like I said, I'm not done with the vlog, and pretty much I'm not going to be done with the vlogs. Next week I'm going to be moving on to something else, but I'm hoping it won't take up as much time as these films had. Because while I liked rewatching these films, they took a lot of time to do just to watch the films and even do these vlogs. And they had their own problems, especially with me having to sit down and do all this. And just the amount of pauses I did during this vlog just shows kind of what the risks of doing this. As I usually had to watch these movies after a day of work, and since these films are so long, that usually meant going into the evening. And for some reason, my dog gets a lot more energy in the evening, so he tends to bug me a little bit more during them. So, but like I said, I'm not done with the MCU perspectives. As long as they're as the MCU produces movies, I will continue to look at them and give my opinions on them. But until the next movie is released, I will have to bid you all adieu. I'm not going to be quitting the vlogs. Like I said, I'm going to be looking at something else next week. Something that's going to be a cartoon this time, and so hopefully won't take up as much time as these vlogs have. But until then, I hope you genuinely enjoyed these, and if you didn't, please explain why. Though I'm guessing the fact that they're very unprofessional and have no budget is probably a good reason why, and the fact that they're over an hour long would probably make you lose your interest as well. But if you enjoyed them, I'm glad you enjoyed them. If you didn't enjoy them, then I recommend maybe watching the movies yourself. I think maybe they'll be. I think honest. While I like talking about them, let's be honest. Some weirdo sitting in a chair isn't probably not going to compare to the movies themselves. So yeah, I hope that like I said. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I will hopefully see you for the next vlog. And hopefully it won't be as big. Hopefully it won't be, and hopefully it'll be better received, and hopefully it'll receive more attention than the MCU perspectives have. So yeah, thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Take care.